YOLO Composing Gloves here, and today we will be jumping into the dominant 7 chords. I've already done this video. This is a redo video because I get a lot of questions, so I'm going to try and explain it in a very clear, precise way. So first, let's just talk about building one, and then we'll talk about how to think about one. So first, to build one, it's called the dominant 7 because you literally built it on the dominant. It's actually tied to the dominant scale, otherwise known as the Mixolydian mode, which we'll talk about later. But it's really easy to use, and it's one of the fundamental 7th chords. It is the most used 7 chord, arguably. And so to build it, you just build a major triad. So we're going to build it on the dominant chord because it makes a lot of sense to build it on the dominant for reasons I'll show in a second. So we build a major triad, so G, B, D, and then we use a minor 7. So it's sometimes called a major minor 7 chord because you have a major chord with a minor 7. So G, right, has an F sharp in it, but we lower it down. And look at this, we're working in C because I said I was working on the 5th. So, right, the 5th is a G. And this naturally occurs in the key of C. This is not the most exciting property though. The reason why it's so used is because it really easily resolves to a C chord. So let me play for you what we have. And then if I play a C major, and I'm just putting them as blocks, well, no voice leading yet. Like that happens really nice. And there it is with a little bit better voice leading. So you're right, we'll drop the G down to a C. We'll take the E up and the G. Well, we could leave the G where it's at and maybe bring a C in up there as well. And let's make this a bit slower just so you can hear. And maybe an octave lower. So that is the dominant 7 chord, and its primary function when you use it is, well, let's play it without the 7. So here's without the 7. So this is just a 5-1 now. So we're going from the 5th scale, the 5th chord, a 5. So just a G major to a C major. And this is really, really, really powerful because we're going from 5-1. That is like the strongest relationship you're going to have. But when we toss that 7 on, we give it just that extra little bit of pull. Versus as not as strong. Like it's good, but if we add on the 7, it really just adds that last little bit of pull. And you might be wondering, why is this? In fact, the primary reason you are going to pull this chord is to establish or tonicize a new key, a new note. So for example, let's say that I want to go to D. And so I think, well, there's various ways I could get to D major, but I want it to sound like the tonic. Like I want it to sound like we've modulated to the key of D. This dominant 7 chord is so powerful that it will make the new key sound tonicized. It's a cheap way of doing it sometimes, but let's say, okay, I played this C. If I want to get to D, all I need to do is play a dominant 7 chord. So I say, okay, well in D, what is the 5 chord? Because that's going to be what we'll form the dominant on. And we say, well, that's A. A is the dominant. So we're going to make an A major chord. Whoops. And then we're going to add a 7, which in our case would be a G. And so here we have a 7. And that, by design, this will pull to a G. And we notice that whenever we write a dominant 7, it will occur in the key. Like, look at this. Typically, right, we'd have a raised 7. That'll be a major 7. But the raised 7 doesn't occur in the key of D because it doesn't have a G sharp in it. But it does have a G in it. And if we go down to the D, so we're going to have this go down to D. And then we need an F sharp, which I shall stick up here. We need, what else do we need? We need an A. So we have, and then we need, well, that's just it. That's all we really need. Let's stick a D in here as well. So we'll do a similar thing that we did over here. And so what I claim is that this chord progression, right, just by hitting this chord, this is going to be the chord that gets called. It's that powerful. And we'll even do a another one of these, so you can hear the power that the 7 adds. Like, you can do this forever. You can just keep going. And you can get to far-flung keys just by going through a bunch of 5-1s. 5-7-1, 5-7-1, 5-7-1, 5-7-1. Okay, now I'm in the key I want. Away you go. That's one way of doing it. And that is the true power here. Now, why is it called the dominant 7 chord? Well, the main reason is it's built on the dominant. Like, if you're going to remember it, just remember it's built on the dominant, and it's a major chord with a minor 7, but it occurs in a way that all the notes will occur diatonic to the key. So if you were to write all the chords and add 7s, so if I were to write, you know, like C, E, G, and then add a 7, right, we have that, and that's a major 7 chord. If we write a D, F, A, so I'm writing in all the chords that go with C major. So if I'm just filling the triads, and then we add a 7, we get a minor 7 chord. And if I add in a E, G, B, so this one is the first one where we have a major chord with a minor 7. And it's got a property that I think becomes more apparent as you build a bunch of these. So let's really quick build a couple. Before we do, let's really quick take note of the keys. This one's a little more technical of a video, but I really want to make clear all the various things this thing can do for you. I want a notepad because we're going to write out the circle of fifths. Okay, so if we start with C, well, let's do fourths instead. You'll see why in a bit. So we go from C to F, from F to B flat. Let's just do those. So if we go from C, the fourth away from C is F. And if we go backwards, the other direction, we go from F to C, right? That's a fifth. So C is a fifth away from F. A fourth away from F is B flat. A fifth away from B flat is F. So if we go one direction, we get fourths. If we go the other direction, we get fifths. That's all that's going on here. So we go C to F, from F to B flat. Or we could go from B flat to F to C. And so in one direction, we're going in fourths. The other direction, we're going in fifths. And so this relates to the dominant 7 by this. Okay, let's make a C dominant 7 chord. So we write a major chord over here. And now, wow, that actually, what the heck? That was nice. So anyways, we have a major chord and we add a minor 7. So normally it'd be a major 7, you know, if we had the B, but we're going to make it a dominant 7, which in this case introduces an A sharp, but let's really view it as a B flat. And we look over here and we say, well, wait a second. C, the key of F has a B flat. That's what the key of F has. It's got B flat. And that's the only flat in the key of F. So this C7 chord, by the way, what is the fifth to F? Oh my gosh, it's frickin' C. So this would be the dominant 7 chord of F, and it happens to contain the one new note that occurs in the key of F. This was like crazy when I figured this out. I was like, what the heck? This is why it pulls to F so nicely. It introduces the one new note in the key that really goes to F. Let's look a little bit further. Let's write F dominant 7, right? Let's see what happens there. So if we go to F, let's do this on like a new measure. Let me play the resolution for you, right? So I claim, okay, this will pull to F then. So we put an F in, and we'll just leave it as a major triad. And we say, hey, that's the 5-1. That's the thing we want. So we say, okay, well, let's go to F. And so if this pattern holds, the F dominant 7 will contain the one new note added if we go to B flat. So we're going around the circle of fifths here. So B flat has 2 flats, right? It's got B flat and E flat. F already has a B flat. So the B flat, we expect an E flat to show up in the dominant 7 chord of F. So we say, okay, here's an F, A, C. And if we add the 7, normally, right, it'd be an E because that's the major 7 away. But we are told by the dominant 7 rule to bring it down to an E flat FL doesn't support flats, so we end up with a sharp here. But if we play it, we have that dominant 7 sound. And if we pull to the tonic, which would be, in this case, if we're calling this the dominant, that would be a, so we're writing here, we have a, what is this? We have a B flat. That's what we're going to. That's the 5th down. So 4th up would be B flat, but we're going a 5th down, so we get a B flat. And look, we get that sound just by, I mean, you can just hear it right away. And if we were to keep our voices consistent, we'd bring this up an octave, and let's add another B flat in here. And bam, we got it. And it introduces that E flat, that one new note right here. So our dominant 7 chord introduces that. So this is another reason why it pulls so strongly. Now there's actually a relation as well to a mode. And we haven't really gone into modes, but the mode that's built on the 5 is called, some people call it the dominant scale, but it's more well known as the Mixolydian mode. And I don't remember, since I'm redoing this video, I don't know where it lands. So a quick review of modes, or maybe this is your first introduction to modes. A mode, right? So we have a C major scale. It's also called the Ionian mode. And the big deal about this is we notice there's a whole step, half step, whole, 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 half. And so if I were to type this in here, this is really like kind of a visual way. We have a whole step, half step, whole, 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 half. And the idea of a mode is we're just going to shift this pattern around. So what if I took this W and just put it at the end here? Well, then we'd only have one whole step. Wow, that's nice. I got bold letters. And now we have one whole step and a half step because we're going to move this guy to the end. Then we have 3 whole steps, whole, 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 half, and then we have another whole step. Well, what would this look like? Well, that's the equivalent of moving this guy up here. So we've just taken this D and moved it up. And look at this. We have one whole step and a half step, whole, 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 half, whole. And that is exactly what we have here. A whole step, half step, whole, 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 half, whole. And if you were to take this last guy and move him over there, well, geez, you would end up, by the way, this is called the Dorian mode. And this is D Dorian because we're starting with D. If we want C Dorian, we would simply build this same pattern starting with C. Now, if we go again and we say, okay, well, now we have a half, 3 whole steps, half, 2 whole steps. This is called the Phrygian mode. And if we were to do this, we'd end up with E Phrygian. And if you wanted C, we can do it really easy by transposing, which in FL is as easy as dragging. And bam, now we have C Phrygian. And there's ways to think about these modes, but they're not worth getting into quite now. We're focusing on the dominant 7. So if we build this same deal, whoops, let's go up to the E. So if we do this again, so I'm just taking the E and moving it up to the F. So now we have F, and this is actually a Lydian mode. And now we go to G. So now we have a G Mixolydian mode. And if we bring this down to C, now we have a C Mixolydian mode. So I know this is sort of overwhelming at first, and this isn't the way you actually think of modes when you're using them. This is purely a way to construct the mode. Can be useful on exams and tests, less useful in actual composition. But if we look at this, there's this really strange thing that we notice. This looks just like a major scale, and all we've done is lowered the 7. The 7 has been lowered, and that's all it is. So we could think of the Mixolydian mode as simply the major scale with a lowered 7. So this lowered 7 we could call a color tone to the major scale. So if we want to sound like we're writing in the Mixolydian mode, we would use a lot of this 7. And so one of the reasons why the dominant 7 chord is called the dominant 7 chord is because this scale is sometimes called the dominant 7 scale. And if we look here, we say, hey, we've got a major 7. And if we were to add what is diatonic to this mode, which would be that B flat there, or in this case, it's written as an A sharp, unfortunately. But if we look here, we say, hey, look at this. This is the dominant 7 just arpeggiated. If we were to work in the dominant scale, this is what we would get out. This is a less friendly way, I think, of looking at it right now. This is sort of like a more advanced way. And it's sort of a revelation if you're like at a level that you can handle stuff like this pretty easily. Which honestly, it's not too crazy. It's just there's a lot of patterns and things you have to have already digested in order to really get it. But the way I thought about it, the way almost every person thinks about it when they're first introduced to it, and the way that it's sort of seen in its useful property is the dominant 7 is simply introduced by writing a major chord with a 7, and it will always be diatonic if you write it on the dominant. So that's why the dominant 7 naturally occurs, as we earlier saw. It's a naturally occurring 7 chord when you get to the 5th. It just fits in diatonically. All these others, right? We had a major 7, a minor 7, another minor 7, another major 7, and then bam, a dominant 7 on the dominant. So that's okay. So I feel like I'm sort of killing it here. But the chord symbol here, this is why it's so common and so important that when we write just a regular old 7, like if I write G7, this is what it is. Right? If I write like G and I want it to be a major 7, I've got to write in major 7. There's other ways to do this, but you have to like add notation to show that it's a major 7. You could write like a triangle. That means major. So in this case, we have established like that's how important it is when something just says just a 7 chord. It is so special. It gets the chord symbol of just the 7. So if I wrote like C7, this is C dominant 7. But it's so popular and so common that we just write C7. That's like how much we use them. And so anyways, there's that. Let's write a progression that uses it really quick. Another progression, maybe not a progression quite like this. And let's also cover voice leading real quick. So typically when you write a G7 chord, or what am I saying? When you write a dominant 7 chord, it's going to be built on the dominant, obviously, and you're going to be using it to get back to the 1, usually. So it's called a cadence point because this is usually a finisher chord. It's like your musical point. You're going to use this to get back to the 1 chord. And so when you do that, there's like rules for the different inversions you're in. But basically, you want to keep things as smooth as possible. In this case, I go from the bass jumps from the G to the C, which is fine because it's the bass. And then we have here the tenor. The tenor jumps up to the C. And this is important if we have, it's less important if it's in a middle voice, but we have a half step resolution. And this is a leading tone. And it's a leading tone going to our tonic. It's the 7, you know, it's the T, do, or that's the wrong note, but. So that's like a really nice thing. You usually want to toss those in if you can. And then we have our 5th here, pulling up to the 3rd of the next chord. Really great. And the 7 pulls down. This is another half step resolution, this time pulling down. And the 4 wants to go to the 1. That's also a tendency tone. So this is good voicing. This will sound nice. And so you can see here I use the same voicing technique over here. Pretty standard thing you do. I don't want to get too crazy with the voicing. And when we're working in MIDI, it's a little strange to look at, honestly. But let's go ahead, add in a little thing. So let's go 1. And then we'll go, I don't know, let's do a 1 chord first. So we have a 1 chord. And we'll do it in root position. What the heck? Then we'll go 4, because 4 chords are solid, man. They're like a friend that's just got your back. We'll put the 4 in second inversion because it's pretty smooth. Look at that. We have F, A, C, and it's in. So if we write figure bass, I don't think I covered figure bass in MIDI music theory. Sort of a sheet music thing, but this is actually a 4/6/4 chord. And then if we were to go, okay, so we've got 1, 6, 4. Let's pull our 5, 1 out of our hat. Let's do that. So we say, okay, well, this is awful close. This would be sweet. We have the option here to go to a D or a B. But first, let's just write in the chord because I realize this honestly is going to be a huge asset. If you can just write in inversions, it's going to be a night and day difference. But let's just write it out. Our chord as we normally would. So the dominant 7, right, is the major 7. I mean, it's a major chord with a minor 7, sometimes also called the major minor 7 chord for the reasons just literally named by the intervals. So we've got a minor 7 here. And so we say, okay, there's our chord. It looks pretty clumsy right now. Let's see if we can't clean this up some. Let's keep the G where it's at. Let's use our fancy voicing we just learned about. So we'll take the G on down here. So we have our bass going down. The F, right? Well, we say, okay, well, what's close to this F here? Well, this F is also in our chord. So we say, hey, let's keep that there. And we're not going from our 5-1. So I don't know what I was saying. They're using the voicing we just learned. Right now, we just want to look for something smooth from our 4-6-4 to our 5 chord. And this 5-1 thing is just a nice bonus. And so we say, okay, that looks all right. We'll come up. And the D, look at this. The D pops right on up right there. That's nice. And then let's go back. Let's go to our 1 chord. So we say, okay, here's our 5-7 to 1. So we have C, E, G, and what you call, look at this. This is smooth. That's a common tone right there. That's nice. And we're going bum bum. That's good. This comes down, and we could just leave it there. That could be fine. That's kind of quick. Let's slow it down some. Now we're like, that's kind of cheated. Why do we feel cheated? Well, we feel cheated because look at this. We have a leading tone and our soprano, and it's not resolving to the 1. And so this would be criticized because, you know, that's one of the most important leading tones. So we expect to hear this. See, like that's what I'm sure many of you were going, something's not right here. And if you didn't see it right away, that's what we had here. The soprano was angry. Now, if you have a leading tone in your middle voices, like let's say we had a B in here, and it didn't go to the C. Let's say we didn't have the C there. We did something weird, like had a E down here or something. Something kind of strange. So this would be in first inversion because the third is in the bass. Well, then we would say that this guy has been frustrated. That's called frustrating the inner voices when it doesn't resolve, like the leading tones don't go where they want. It's less severe, but it is kind of like it's not as nice. It has a different kind of sound to it though. Notice it's not nearly as bad an offender as leaving this guy off. Like if you leave this guy off, people are gonna go, something's not quite right here. Like something's kind of strange. But yeah, we've got like notes everywhere now. Look at this. What kind of 4-part texture is this? It's not a 4-part texture. We're writing something crazy. But basically, anyways, there's like a chord progression that we could be writing right there. This sort of like classical harmony. But if you're writing like a progression, you're going along, making your dank beat. Like let's go ahead and write out something with a synth maybe. Let's do an arp. So let me turn the volume down on this guy because he's just loud to begin with. Turn the arp on, bring the gate down. So we're just gonna use a saw wave. Open up a new pattern. And we say, all right, we want to write in minor. Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, let's talk about minor, because minor is kind of a separate thing. So, okay, we're writing along a minor. You know, we're doing R1. Here's R1. And we'll do them in like block chords. So we'll put our 5-7 like over here. So we have our R1, and then we'll go to our 5s. We'll go back to our 1. All right, I lied. We're going to our 1 again. 1-5-1-5 can be really good. You know, it's pretty effective at what it does. And notice here that I'm using a leading tone. You know, you would think, okay, this is a 1 chord, this is a 5 chord. I'm writing inversions again. I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not. But, you know, let's say, okay, we put our notes up here. This is what I see students do a lot. And so we have our notes up here, but this is like really clunky. Like, you know, like, listen to this. Like, it can be cool, especially with like synths, because synths get away with a lot of things. But bringing these down, and we don't want a minor because we have no leading tone. And so if we want to keep our T-do intact, meaning our 7-1, that half step, that really powerful tendency tone, we need this to be major. So whenever you're writing in a minor key, freaking have a raised 7. You don't have a raised 7, you're writing in a mode, actually, technically. So, anyways. Let's add a filter to this. It's a little bright. And let's make him cooler. Maybe add some pluck to this dude. Maybe it's a girl. I don't know. And we'll add in some verb. So now it's a little bit spicier. And we should label our stuff, right? So we have a minor 1. And we're going to a 5 chord. It's a major 5 chord just because of what we just talked about. We need that leading tone. And this actually comes with a number of other things I should say, but I'm not going to say because we're working in MIDI. But anyways, this is 5. We have the third in the bass, so that makes it a 6 chord because it's a first inversion chord. We go back to that good old 1 chord here. So we have a 1 chord. And now we're going to pull our 5-7 over here. So we're going to put 5, still a major 5, 7. And to do this, we are going to need to omit a voice because I'm working with only 3 notes. It's going to be all strange if I don't. Typically, we omit the 5th. Let's see how that works out for us, right? So we say, okay, let's go ahead and keep this same texture. So I have my 5 chord here. This is going to be a 5-7. And we say, okay, the 5th in here is the D. So let's get rid of the D. See you later, Mr. D. Oh, look at that. That's our new sound. It's kind of nice. And we know that the 7, right, would be G, B, D, F. So we say, okay, we'll put an F in there. And that looks pretty smoothish. Why not? We won't stress about it too much. And so here's our dominant 7, and we've omitted the 5th. So, right, if we added the 5th, it'd be there, and we'd still be in a first inversion. It should be noted that you can have third inversion things. Don't do it. Just don't, please. So, and then this will pull back to the 1 quite nicely. So we'll put that there. And this, right, is a 1 chord. So we put a 1 right there. And now we have this. And there you have it. There we go. We used it in a progression. And it pulls back to the 1 quite nicely. Let's say that we do something else over here, right? Because we have a 5-5. You know, that's all right, but it's like, you know, how many 5s we're going to have. So let's, instead of doing a 5 chord here, what we could do is replace it with something that has a similar function. And so if you really think about it, a 7 chord has a very similar function. We'll put a 7 chord in there. And some people argue that the 7 chord is really just a 5 with a phantom root. What do I mean by that? Well, look at this. If we play a 7 chord, we have a B diminished chord, right? So it's going to be B, D, F. And we think, wait a second. The F is the 7 of the G dominant 7 chord. So there are some textbooks out there that actually argue that the reason that there is no actual real 7 dominant function chord, that the 7 chord is actually, the 7 diminished chord is actually just a 5 chord, 5-7, meaning this B, D, F isn't really a B, D, F. It's not really a B diminished chord. It's a G 7 chord. It's got the G, B, D, it's G major with the lowered 7, which would be F. So it's just really missing that G. So we could say, oh, well, it's actually just a 5 chord, a 5-7 chord with a phantom root. Some people say that. So we could replace it here with that and say, let's see what we could do with that. So in that case, we're just swinging a very similar thing to what we have, you know, right here. Except for now, we're leaving the root out. And so it's like, oh, let's see how that goes. Maybe that's a better sound. Let's see if we leave the third out on that one. Yeah, let's, well, I don't know about this. Let's see. So we'll bring this down, I mean, not down, up. So we're putting the 5th in, leaving the 3rd out. You know, maybe that will offer a better sound because we've got that sound kind of in here with this guy already. So now let's say, oh, well, let's give him the root over here. So we'll call this one a 7, but we really could call this a 5-7 with a missing root, this guy. But let's see what we got. And look at this. Because we've chosen to do a different voicing, I kind of think that we could pull this off and do like a 5-1 with the soprano. That could be pretty cool. Our inner voices, we have a little more freedom with. We can do sort of different things with them. I feel like this might be a little more resolved. And maybe even bring this guy down to like a low C, like have a bass just show up here. Maybe too much. And then, oh my gosh, look at that. This is freaking amazing. We could keep it going. Now we've got it again, and this time we have the 7 in the bass. So that's a 3rd inversion, the thing I said don't do. But, you know, let's see what it does. And let's put another 1 here so we can sort of feel where it's going to end up. So we'll end up with a third inversion 1 chord here if we keep our current pace. And so we say, okay, let's check that out. Oh my gosh, this is a cadential 6/4 we're running into right now. I feel like, sure, let's talk about it real quick. So when you hear this sound, what do you think should happen? I think it should go. I'm not the greatest singer. Let me play it. Let me write it in. So when we have so this is a 1/6/4 chord, meaning it's a 1 chord in the second inversion. Holy cow. I'm spewing a lot of theory terms that I haven't talked about for a while. But anyways, here's a 1/6/4 chord. It's called the cadential 6/4 because we're going to cadence. So we're going to make our point here. This is our moment of pause. It's our final statement. And then we're going to put a 5 here. It's got I always think of Beethoven when I hear this. It's just a Beethoven kind of thing. We put a 5 in. And so we're pulling down. We're doing our first inversion to a root 5. And then we move on from here to a new. Let's do something exciting, let's do one of an open voicing. So look at this. This is just beautiful. And away we go into our next section. This is great, man. Maybe you might put some tempo automation, slow that down. So if we play it now, let's go ahead. Let's do one of these, and I feel like we could have a bigger decay. It might be too much. How many? Oh, it's rated in milliseconds over there. Okay, whatever. So, okay, here we go. We could really get some cool stuff going here. And so we've got most of our chords also labeled up here. So this is kind of nice, We can see what we're doing. I've listed out sort of some reasons why you might change things, look for ways to spice it up. Look at this. We wound up going through this cool progression, reaching a cadential 6/4. How great is that? And then we resolve down. So there you go. That's the stuff. If you don't think this is cool, then you should get out of music, man. This is like the coolest stuff ever. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Did this make more sense to you? I'm probably going to just remove the other video from the series, but it will still be public, so you can go and look at it if you want. So I was just getting a lot of questions. People are like, why is this there and that's that? I thought sort of chose a weird way to sort of explain things. Subscribe, support me on Patreon. That is something I really appreciate. It helps me big time because I have no idea how I'm going to pay for school right now. And have a blessed day.